dessa experiência. E é verdade, é verdade. Olha que eu não estou exagerando. Só você der uma olhada em volta os objetos que estão aqui, você vai perceber que o que vai acontecer aqui é diferente. É criativo, é único. Ok, estamos no ar. Sejam todos bem-vindos, bem-vindas. É um privilégio enorme contar com o professor Noam aqui conosco. Essa é uma parceria entre a comunidade Shalom e a CIP, que no ano passado conseguiu em conjunto lançar a Haggadah de Pessach do professor Noam, e agora temos ele para alguns encontros e palestras sobre a Hagadá e também outros assuntos. Ele esteve conosco 2 semanas atrás, tanto na Shalom como na CIP, falando dos 70 anos da Declaração Universal dos Direitos Humanos aqui, e 70 anos do Estado de Israel lá na comunidade Shalom. Depois ele viajou um pouquinho pelo Brasil, porque ninguém é de ferro. Nesse caminho fez também uma palestra na comunidade de Curitiba, e agora está conosco de volta para esse encontro, que foi realizado ontem na comunidade Shalom. A comunidade Shalom também terá com ele outros encontros nos próximos dias, e finalmente no domingo ele terá um encontro com educadores, organizado pela CONIB. Noam estará com educadores para transmitir um pouco da sua visão judaica e educativa e pedagógica para os nossos educadores. התחלנו להתרגל עם זה שאתה נוסע שבועיים וחוזר. אז בפעם הבאה תדבר על ספירת העומר בעוד שבועיים. בסדר? Ok? Disse para ele que a gente começou a se acostumar com a ideia de que ele viaja por 2 semanas e volta para falar sobre algum assunto. O próximo assunto é contagem do Homer daqui 2 semanas. Gostaríamos muito de poder contá-lo com ele. Talvez dessa vez só à distância pela internet. Toda rabá shuvpa.
My name is Noam, and I am an international chef, the kind that you see on television that have a French accent and can make all kinds of wonderful recipes and can cut onions very, very quickly without cutting their fingers. And then they promise you that the fanciest cuisine of France can be in your kitchens. Just call this telephone number. So this is my cookbook, now translated and adapted for Portuguese. It's a cookbook not just for the food, but I'm a party planner. And you are all here to prepare your party. You're going to have a Back to Egypt party very soon, in 2 weeks. You're going to be back in slavery. You're going to be back having salt water and maror, bitter herbs, and this awful bread that's called matzah that you can't eat. And once you eat it, you can't get it out of your stomach unless you eat many prunes and dates and mangoes, right? Always mix your matzah with lots of Brazilian fruits. Otherwise, you will feel the punishment. So what I have done in many holidays, especially for Pesach, is to create many ideas to turn Pesach into a homemade holiday. I am the chef of homemade Judaism. I think that's very important to remember. Not just what it says in the books, what it says in the laws. Homemade Judaism is the Judaism that each family makes for itself. And each one of you has special recipes and special jokes and special music that you use at your Seder. I want to show you how you can make your homemade Judaism even more interesting and have many more people be part of your homemade Judaism. Now think of it. What makes homemade food so special? Homemade food is food that's made by somebody who you really care about, maybe your grandmother. Homemade food has a special taste, has a special smell to it. There's a story that goes with homemade food. And that homemade food is personalized. It's specifically for your family. So I'd like to suggest that if you want the Seder, the word Seder means order. If you want the order to become your order, if you want to personalize the Seder, then what you have to do is you have to find a way to make the Seder memorable. As we know, in the modern world, the things that are most important to us, the things that give meaning to our lives, are not things that we sit passively and receive. We don't just get meaning, we make our own meaning. And we make our own memories. And only if we maximize the participation of the people in the Seder, so they're not passive but they're active, then it will be meaningful. The same thing is true if you go to Israel. If you go to Israel and you go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, drive you there in an air-conditioned bus, and they let you out right next to the wall, and you come out of the bus and you say, "What's so special about this wall? In Sao Paulo, we have an even better temple." I went to visit your temple. It's an amazing temple. But what makes an experience of an aliyat regel, of a pilgrimage, of something that's important, is that you look forward to it, that you prepare for it, that you personalize it, not that you're handed it on a silver platter. And so think of this as the most important test of your Seder. Am I going to make this Seder memorable, different than other Seders, and yet similar to other Seders? Because Seder is a mixture of two opposite things. It's the same old story that I remember, because each one of us becomes like the 5-year-old child. Do you know what it's like to read a story for a 5-year-old child? I know from my children and my grandchildren. I come and I say, "What story do you want to hear?" And they pick the same story they picked the night before and the night before. And I am bored. And I say, "Wouldn't you like a new story?" "No." And then I start to tell the story, and then I want it to go faster, so I skip. "You skipped." I say, "If you know the story already, why do I have to read it?" "No, you read it. Every line, you read it." Because it's part of the structure of their world. It gives them comfort. It gives them order, especially before they go to sleep. All of us on Pesach become 5-year-old children. We want something we remember from the Seder. And all the different people coming to your Seder may have very different memories of what their Seder was. It's very hard for you to live up to all of the expectations of different people coming to your Seder. And in many ways, you can't live up to all those expectations. But you can also create new memories. Because part of us wants it to be the same old Seder that we always hated, and it was always so boring that our grandfather and our great uncle used to read. We hated it, but we also loved it. So you also need to have part of the Seder which is creating new memories. Now, when do we pay attention to things? When do we remember something? Not when it's the same, but when it's a little different, like wearing this strange hat. All I had to do was put on a hat, and immediately it got people's attention. If I switch hats, then you're going to have to pay attention again. Now I'm Pharaoh. If you have 5 hats during the Seder, each time you will draw attention. All right? Oh, thank you very much. Nefertiti. All right? So the key element here is that we have to find a way to make as many people at our Seder feel that this is their Seder. Here's an example. Look at this beautiful Seder table that Laura and Isa put together. It's magnificent. It has a beautiful afikoman bag. As soon as you see this bag, this is my Seder. I remember the afikoman and the dishes. And then my wife's idea, which Isa and Laura did, each bottle is, what is it? Each one is one of the 10 plagues. If you have on your table these 10 plagues, then people would say, How is this Seder different than all other? Ma nishtana haseder hazeh mikol haleilot. You want people to say how different it is. Because Pesach is about memory and tradition, but it's also about intentionally making differences that will draw people's attention. Right? Now, for example, what is this? What's the difference between this wine and this wine?
Why there is not wine? It's something else.
This is not wine. This is good for making charoset, but it is not good for Pesach. On Pesach, you're supposed to have the best wine. The very best. This is pretty good. This is Hermon. You can get good Israeli wines, good Brazilian wines, good Chilean wines, and all the Argentinians think the Argentinian wine is the best, right? So if you have somebody coming to your Seder who knows something, understands something about wines, like Alberto, right? Then you ask that person to bring 4 different wines for 4 different cups. Then the Seder will be different, and it will taste much better. Second thing, this is a beautiful Seder plate. You can come and look at it later. This is Louise and Sandra's, I think. Beautiful. Now, how many people have a Seder plate at home? Okay. When you have a Seder in your house and you invite someone else, say, would you please bring your Seder plate from your home to our home? And if you have a beautiful Kiddush cup, bring your Kiddush cup. When people bring things that are part of their memories of Pesach to your table, they feel, oh, I'm feeling at home. Homemade Judaism is making home. Home is not the place you live. That's the house you live in. In the world, people almost never have meals together. The house is the place where they happen to sleep, and then everybody goes and does something else. But Shabbat and Pesach makes a home because people eat together. You want to make people bring their home to your home. So you could start the Seder by asking everyone, tell me about your favorite thing from the Seder that you grew up in. What is the strangest Seder you ever had? The Seder in Kathmandu or the Seder in Haiti? Just those little things of sharing memories will make it an incredible experience. Now, there's other things to make your Seder. What's this? What's it for? What's it for besides sleeping? What's it for? You say for the master of the house to recline, right? But it's not only for the master of the house. It can be for everybody at your house to have their own, their own pillow, right? Now, of course, we're supposed to eat just like the Greeks used to eat on their couch with their legs up, right? Drinking wine and having dips and eating, right? So what if you have everybody coming to your Seder, you call in advance, please bring your own pillow with your nicest pillowcase. Maybe you can get somebody also to tie-dye it with frogs or with something for Pesach on it. When they come to your Seder, they already know this is going to be a special Seder. This is going to be different. That's what you want. People have to already get into the mood, into the expectation. For example, when they come to your Seder table, when they come to knock on the door of your house, you have pictures of Pesach on the door. You have music, like the CD from the Hagadá. You can put on music in the background. As soon as they walk into the house, they already see Pesach is coming. They see the pictures. They hear the music. They have their own pillow. If the Seder is interesting, that's good. And if it's not interesting, then they can sleep. Give them their choice. But already they're going to relate to it differently because they brought their own Seder plate. They brought their Kiddush wine. So all those special things make people feel at home in a Seder. A Seder needs a warm-up. Just like before you exercise, you warm up. So before you start your Pesach Seder, you have to get people into the right mood for Pesach. What's one way to do that? The rabbis in the Talmud Bavli, Rava, he would start every lecture with a joke, right? So Michelle started tonight by telling us a joke about when I'm going to come back in 2 weeks. It didn't matter whether it was a good joke or a bad joke. It was a joke. And people laughed and smiled. They felt comfortable. They didn't say, oh, now is the service beginning. Turn to page 32 and be quiet. No. The idea is to be funny. So I passed out to you. We didn't have enough, but they can send more. These are jokes about Pesach from the New Yorker magazine, which I happen to like very much. Maybe it's your sense of humor. If you start your Seder with a joke, that's a good way to start your Seder. Or there's another thing you can do with starting your Seder. Take a look at the Haggadah. Does every 2 people have Haggadah? Some people who don't. Leandro, can you bring some Haggadot for some of these people? Okay. Now, tell me, what is your favorite song from Seder Pessach? Your favorite song? Dayenu. Very good song. Good. What's another favorite song? Haggadah, Echad mi yodea. Good. Where in the Haggadah is Haggadah? At the very end. Now, tell me the truth. Have you ever been at a Seder in which instead of people staying until the end of the Seder, they left right after the meal? Did that ever happen to you? Right? Now, some people in Hebrew school, they tell them there are 4 cups, but they only see 2 cups. The second half they never see. But it means they will never hear Haggadah. The best songs are in the end, but they don't have to be at the end. Haggadah and Echad mi yodea are at the end of the Haggadah because that's the songbook of the Haggadah. But you could do them at the beginning. I would like to suggest this year that you start your Seder by doing Haggadah first before the Kiddush. It will wake everybody up. What page is Haggadah on it? Can you find? Did we get enough? Did everybody get Haggadah? How are we doing? You don't have any Haggadah, right? You think they're bringing it? Okay. And you all right. Okay. So take a look. Can anybody help me find the page for Haggadah? 124. Can you say that in Portuguese? Excellent Portuguese. Okay. I think. Right? So on 124, you have it in Portuguese. You have it in Aramite. Now let's try the song. You know the song. Haggadah, Haggadah. Now, we need some people to participate in this song. Do we have anybody who would like to be the goat? Who's a good goat? Do we have a goat? Somebody want to try out for that role? What's the sound of that?
There is a goat.
That's a goat?
Yeah, there's a goat.
Could you make me the sound of a goat? Who's our goat?
Not there. Are you the second?
No. No, we need somebody to make the sound of a goat. Who can do that? Okay, let me try. Do we accept him as the goat? Was that a good one? Try again? Good. Now, do we have somebody to be the cat? Do we have somebody to be the cat who can do something like this? Right? Who do we have to be the cat? Please, somebody? Oh, you raised your hand. Now you're the cat. You're the cat. No, cat, please. Let me hear. Meow. Very good. Now, can we have a dog, please? We need one dog, and then we can start. Who's going to be the dog? Who's the dog? Just raise your hand. You're the dog. Could you try it out, please? What sound do you make? Excellent. Now we're ready for the song, right? Ready? Haggadah, Dezabin Abba Bitre Zuze, Haggadah, Haggadah, Ve'ata Shunra cat. Where's our cat? Ve'ata Shunra ve'achla legadia. Dezabin Abba Bitre Zuze, Haggadah, Haggadah, Ve'ata Chalba Kelev. Ve'nashach leshunra, De'achla legadia, Dezabin Abba Bitre Zuze, Haggadah, Haggadah. So now you see the basic idea. The idea is to warm people up, to get them to have some fun, to tell them to bring along their stuffed animals if you want to. And if you start with Haggadah, what will people say? Manishtana Halaila Hazé mikol halailot. How is this night different than all other Seders they ever had? That's what you want. And you want them to feel fun. And they'll already have a more positive attitude towards your Seder. Now, something else. Do you know that it is a mitzvah for Rosh Hashanah and for Pesach to give gifts to your whole family? You want to put people in a good mood at your Seder? Bring them gifts. There's an argument in the Talmud, what is the best gift? One view says the same gift for men, for women, and children. And what is the same gift? It's good wine. Other ones say the men like the wine, and the women like new clothes, and the children like desserts, candy, and nuts. If you buy new presents for people and put them on your Seder table and give to each member of the family, everybody will be in a wonderful mood for Pesach. My wife Marcella and I have been in Brazil for 2.5 weeks. Every time we meet someone, they are always bringing us the most amazing gifts. You live in a country where people love to give gifts. Pesach is a good time. Not Hanukkah, not Christmas. Pesach is a good time. And again, it will put people in a wonderful mood for what we want. Okay. Now, let's look at, I think everybody has a copy of the Cinco Obstáculos, right? Or every 2 people have one? Yeah. You can share. So let's think about what are 5 of the obstacles that makes it difficult to have a Seder with a little bit of innovation, with a little bit of variety, with a little bit of change. There are many obstacles. It's not easy to do. The first obstacle is that everybody at the Seder has one question that they say again and again and again, each time with greater urgency. What's that question they ask? When do we eat? What time do you start your Seder? What time in Sao Paulo? 7:30. 7:30. That's already pretty late where I come from. You arrive at the Seder table. You just came from work. You sit down at the table. Beautiful dishes. Oh, this is the place to sit, right? Beautiful dishes you have. Beautiful glasses. There's a smell coming from the kitchen. Your stomach begins to release already the acid in your stomach. You're ready to eat. And then they drop a book on your plate. We're going to be reading this book for about an hour or an hour and a half. But don't worry, soon we will serve. If you're lucky, you might get a little piece of potato. That's not really worth very much, is it? Now, that's not what the rabbis wanted. The rabbis 2,000 years ago, when they created the Pesach Seder, wanted people to have much to eat at the section called karpas. What does karpas mean? Karpos is Greek. Karpas means green vegetables. They wanted people to have many hors d'oeuvres. So you start Pesach with kiddush, right? Like you would do it at any wedding or any bar mitzvah. You start with wine, and then you have hors d'oeuvres. How do you say hors d'oeuvres in? Okay, appetizers. And what happens? All the appetizers that we eat are food that we eat with our hands, right? It could be peanuts, it might be carrots, it might be cucumbers. What in Brazil would be good appetizers at a wedding? I have no idea. Shrimp, probably no. Probably, right? Carrots. Cashews, right? Because they're salty, right? Or something maybe with a little mustard. That's what the rabbis used to do, because the rabbis wanted the Seder to be like a Greek symposium. And a Greek symposium, the word symposium means to drink wine together. They wanted people to drink wine, to recline on the pillow, to talk about freedom and slavery and Pesach, and to constantly eat. In Yiddish, you would say nash and drash. That is eating and talking. That's the Jewish thing to do, bringing them together. It's not supposed to be first we do the Haggadah and then we eat. That's masochistic. I don't have to translate that. That's like being at the table on Pesach is like having Yom Kippur in front of an open refrigerator. Pesach is not Yom Kippur. It's the time of being free and having many dips. So if you look over on the table there, right? That's after we're done. You're finally going to get your... We really should serve that right now. If I had multiple service people, we would go around and offer to each one of you something to eat with dipping. And so in our family, Marcella and I, after the first cup of wine, and we do karpas, then we pass out gefilte fish and chrein, hard-boiled eggs and salt water, cucumbers, artichokes, avocado dips, potato chip dips, all kinds of things like that. And we leave it on the table during the whole of Magid, during the whole storytelling part of the Seder. What question disappears? What new question emerges? Manishtana Halaila Hazé mikol Halailot. How is this Seder different than every other Seder? But that's what the rabbis wanted. They wanted us to do the dipping. So that's your first obstacle to the Seder. People are hungry. And the first solution is lots of dips. Okay? Second problem. Look on your pages of the Cinco. All right? The second problem is the Haggadah is the problem. Why is the Haggadah the problem? I'll give you an example. Take a look on page 3. Could I ask somebody to read in the middle of page 3 from David Hartman, my teacher? Michelle, are you willing to read?
David Hartman em Liberando o Seder. A Haggadah deve facilitar animado diálogo. Infelizmente, o Seder muitas vezes se torna uma leitura longa e contínua, em vez de uma trama com papéis criativos. Não deixe a palavra impressa congelar a imaginação. Desculpe, você é livre. Esta Haggadah convida você a moldar seu próprio ser.
Right? Now, if I ask anyone at CP, what is a Haggadah, what will they tell you? It's a book. What do you do with this book? You read it. You read it for as long as you can until hunger overtakes you. Right? And when you're reading, you read, You read, you read, you read. What are you doing when they're reading out loud? You might be talking. Sleeping. You might be texting, right? That's in the modern world, right? You might be counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're counting. 1, 2, and then you have to prepare the part that you have to read because you don't want to make a mistake. If you read out loud in Hebrew or in Portuguese and you make a little mistake, then everybody at the Seder wants to correct you because you won't be able to live your life well until you learn how to read properly without mistakes. And so people are often worried about the performance of the Haggadah, reading it out loud. But what David Hartman says, I think is right. The Haggadah is not a book that you're supposed to read out loud. The Haggadah is a checklist. How do you translate that? A checklist. It's a checklist of activities that you're doing. The activities of the Seder are drinking 4 cups, eating maror, making a sandwich, breaking an afikoman, playing a game, hiding it and finding it. One group of activities are ritual activities, playing with the food. The second activity of the Haggadah is the word Haggadah. What does Haggadah mean? It means to tell a story. Who is supposed to tell a story to whom on Pesach? The parents and the grandparents are supposed to tell a story to their children. What story? The story of Exodus. They're supposed to study to become at Stanislavski school. They're supposed to see themselves as if they went out of Egypt and to be a good actor. In your family, you have a wonderful artist, but do you have anybody who's in theater? Do you have any people who are in drama? You want the best storytellers to feel as if they're slaves and to tell the story. And I want you to pay very important attention. In the Haggadah of Pesach, the story of the Exodus is not in the Haggadah. There is one sentence, Avadim ayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. That is the topic of the story, but it's not the story. You're not supposed to read the Haggadah out loud. You're with your checklist. When you come to we were slaves, now is the time to tell the story. Now, what's a good way to tell the story? Marcella, I need Marcella now. Okay, she's going to help you figure out how you tell a story. But not only to tell stories about Egypt, also to tell family stories. All right? So, Louise just told me this wonderful story that when your grandfather was 91, and he was maybe you'll tell him that story better than I will, and you can tell him in Portuguese.
O meu avô nunca tinha contado como ele escapou de Dachau, para ninguém, nem para os filhos dele. E ele sempre liderava o Seder de Pessach. E aí um ano ele chegou e falou, todo ano a gente conta de como a gente escapou do Egito. E esse ano eu vou contar como eu escapei de Dachau. Então foi um Seder completamente diferente por causa disso, né?
Now, I know that in CP, like in Shalom, that the children do a project about their families, where their families came from. Ah, very good. Very good. Oh, you're going to be terrific. So this is the Album de Familia, right, of Rebecca, and I can't pronounce her whole name. And this is a very nice book, right? So this came out from CP, and they prepare it in the school. But when does the child have a chance to tell her own family story to the family? Pesach is the perfect time. Not only do you have a Seder plate with karpas, but you also put this book on the Seder plate. And when you come to the story, you pick it up and saying, tell me the story. And you ask your child who did this story to tell something of the family stories. That's what Haggadah means, to tell the story. And then you'll have an uncle and an aunt and a grandfather say, yes, let me tell you another family story. It's those stories which makes Pesach Pesach. If you read every page of this wonderful Haggadah, you have not told the story. If you read every page, you have not made yourself or anybody in your family feel as if they went out of Egypt. It's that feeling which is important. Telling your story in the first person. And this is what Marcella has done to prepare for telling the story. Okay, come. Do we have any matzah for them? Oh, yes. Could you put matzah on your shoulder? Very good. Okay.
So here we have the daughter of Paro, who finds his little baby. This is actually a costume we found in Israel for Purim. And it's made in China. But I saw this, I bought 10 of them, the biggest size. My granddaughters all are going to show up in similar ones like this. We brought it to Curitiba, and we brought it to Shalom, and we bring one here. And so this is the daughter of Paro, and if you have a little doll and little baby, that's your job. This is obviously Paro. Also, the hat is from China. Will you walk around like a mannequin, like you can show around? And this outfit I just made from beautiful material. As long as it shines, people love it. And this is obviously the slave from one of the Jewish slaves. And if you have a lot of children and you have a sewing machine, you can make little things like that. And it can double as kutonet pasim when you get to Parashat Yosef. This is always very useful. You can play, it can be Avraham, it can be Moshe, it can be Yosef, it can be anything, but it's really good. Anything that is shiny and has stripes is fine. So I need to take a picture of you guys.
So, what's special about Pesach education is we use props. How do you say props in Portuguese? Right? Props, as props in a theater. So we have many props. We have maror, we have matzah, we have hats. And in Pesach, all you need is to take out the props and invite people to be their own actors. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcella. It's really good. Now, 3 obstacles. Obstacle number 1 is people are hungry, give them many hors d'oeuvres. Problem number 2, people think they're supposed to read the whole Haggadah. You do not have to read the whole Haggadah. In fact, if you read the whole Haggadah, you won't have enough time to tell the story of your family and to tell the story of Egypt, and that's what's really important. Third problem on page 7 is it a lot of work to prepare for Pesach? I think it's a tremendous amount of work, but I think people put the emphasis in the wrong place. Too much cleaning and too much cooking. Anybody who came tonight gets a coupon from me. Take off 2 hours from cleaning your house, right? And instead of doing the cleaning, spend 2 hours preparing the Seder, what you're going to read, what playing and games you're going to do. But the fourth obstacle, no, I got that wrong. The fourth obstaculo is the biggest problem. And what's the biggest problem on page 7? The family. Families don't like change, do they? They hate change. Now, when the grandfather was there, and usually the grandfathers are gone by now. Of course, the grandmother did something else, but she didn't run the Seder.
Noam, you're a grandfather.
Oh, I'm a grandfather. When the immigrant grandfather is gone, then the question becomes, the authentic Seder we think is what he did. Even if your grandfather or your great-grandfather was not a Talmid Chacham, he didn't know so much Judaism, whatever he did we think is authentic. That's really not authentic. Now the problem is, your family thinks the real Pesach was what our grandfather did. But that was boring, and we're hungry, and we did that last night, so why do the same thing 2 nights in a row? And then you come with an idea, you come back from this evening, and you have many, many ideas. You have enough ideas for the next 100 years of Seders in your house, many new ideas. And you say, look at all the wonderful ideas I have. And they say to you, your family says, our grandfather's Seder wasn't good enough? The Seder isn't long enough as it is? Right? And then they say, are you the rabbi in the family now? Who are you to tell us what to do? It's very hard to make changes. Right? Now, I'd like to suggest, from my point of view, that sometimes at the Seder table with your family, you have to make a choice. Is it more important shalom bayit, harmony in familia, or is it more important to make the Seder meaningful for you, your children, and your grandchildren? And I say on Pesach, the children and the grandchildren are more important than shalom bayit. And therefore, you need to find a way to make something in this evening speak to them in a special way. Now, families are difficult, very difficult. So 2 ideas to think about. Number 1 is, never change more than 10% of your Seder in 1 year. Right? If you're from New York City, you can change your Seder 10%. If you change 20%, the family will never speak to you again. If your family is from Canada, then you can change 5%. Canadians are very conservative. If your family is from California, you can change 25%, because people from California are crazy and experimental and far from their traditions. In England, you can change 1 or 2%. If you're in a Moroccan family or a Halabi family, how much can you change? Well, I want to push for at least 1%, but I understand it's difficult, right? So you have to find out what's appropriate for your family. But the mitzvah from Maimonides, who was Sfaradi, right? Maimonides says every Seder you have to have something different, so the children will ask, Ma nishtana Halaila Hazé mikol haleilot. Something has to be different, even if 99% is the same. Now, when you want to make a change, it might be helpful if we would give you a family therapy kit. And with a family therapy kit, maybe you could work with your family. My wife is a therapist. You can call her for advice on helping the family make changes. But the most important thing, whatever changes you want to add, you have to form a coalition. You have to find partners in your family or guests that you invite to your Seder who are also interested in making a few changes. And then if you ask them to help you, then it's not you against the whole family. It's you and individuals that you've chosen. Now, everybody knows if you're a leader of a committee or a leader of a synagogue or a leader of a business, what's the most important thing to know about getting things done? Great. And one other thing, delegate. Don't try to do everything yourself. The more people who participate in as a team with you, the better it will go. So think about it. Does anybody here have coming to their Seder a teacher or a social worker or a therapist? Anybody have any of that in your family? Right? Not everybody is a businessman in Sao Paulo. There must be somebody who helps people. So if you have that person, you say, before Seder, I want you to take the 4 children. I want you to spend some time with the 4 children. There's ideas in the Haggadah, and to do something maybe on the adolescent child and why children are rebels. And if you have someone who's good in the family who tells stories, you ask them to organize the children to do a play about Egypt. And if you have people who are artists, then you ask the artists to do the art of the 4 children, or the art of the 10 plagues. And then they bringing their world, their strengths, their talent to the Seder. At the same time, you have people who are more traditional, and you say, Uncle Joe, you're Joe? Uncle Joe, will you please do Kiddush? I love the way you do Kiddush. And you are so good singing. Will you lead us in Dayenu? If you give out different roles to people before the Seder, then they come to the Seder, and this is their Seder. It's not enough to participate. You read, you read, you read. That's not enough. And if you print up before the Seder a list of who is taking each part, Uncle Joe, who's going to do Kiddush, and Joachim, who is going to do the 4 children, and Susie, who's going to do the artwork of the 10 plagues, and Chaim, who's going to do the songs. If you just print up who's doing each thing, and then you also have to print up who's bringing the gefilte fish, who's bringing the good wine, then and who's doing the dishes, then everybody knows they have a place in the Seder, and no one will say, hurry up, let's skip to the end, because then they're skipping family members who are part of the plan. Delegating is the key. Later on, if you buy one of these Haggadot, you will get the program that was put together by the Haggadah team. This is a Seder planner. It lists different parts of the Seder with ideas. If you want a part of the Seder for many young children, there's ideas for children. If you want it for teenagers, different ideas. If you want it for adults who are interested, other ideas. And if you have adults who are not interested, what do you have for them? Food. And a nice pillow, right? And there's lots of ideas here. If you plan a little bit in advance what you want, then the Seder will go much better. Okay, let's open up the Haggadot and get some ideas. Does anybody have any questions, any suggestions, any ideas they do at their Seder that they want to suggest to other people?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How do you mix old people and young people when the table is 4 meters, 5 meters long, and you have the leading people scattered around the table, and you have the kids, around?
How many people do you have at your Seder? 24, okay. Okay, obviously that's a challenge. Nobody said it's easy to balance. Let me make 3 suggestions. Number 1, invite the parents with younger children to come to your Seder not at 7:30, to come at 6:30. And then do all kinds of special activities for the children, like the dress up to tell the story, like showing them a part of the movie by Steven Spielberg, The Prince of Egypt, which is a great story. Having some of the parents or the teenagers reading stories to the children, giving them lots of Lego and having them build pyramids and then put the pyramids on your table. If you do these ideas, then you know that for the first hour, the kids have had a real Pesach experience. And even if they go and play in another room or in the corner, you know they had a Pesach experience. Number 2, start with Haggadah. Let them do the songs which they love the most. All right? And now, the second thing is, if the first part of the Seder is for younger children, then there's a second part of the Seder, which is for older people. That's the part where you have them talk about things that are important today. For example, well, you know what? I'll show you the example when we read in the Haggadah. So you have a part which is especially for children and a part which is especially for teenagers and adults. And if you do those things, then already your Seder will be better. Now, another idea is, how long can people sit at a table? Right? For 2 hours? For 3 hours? Do you have a very big house or apartment? Do you also have a living room? Yes. So one nice way to start your Seder is to start the Seder in the living room. And you have people sitting on pillows, and you have people on couches, and you have all the dips on the tables. And so if you do the first part of the Seder in the living room, people are very comfortable. And then when you're ready to go and have the food, matzah, maror, and knedlach, and chicken soup, then you have them go to the table. And you do the first kiddush in the living room, yes. Now, I don't know whether you have white couches or not. You may need to have white wine. But it's the same way when you have guests. When guests come to your house for dinner, you start in the living room with the hors d'oeuvres, and then after half an hour, you move to the table. The moving is very good. You could even put a blue piece of cloth and step over it like you're crossing the Red Sea to go to the table. Little things like that. Okay. Anybody else have a question or another example? Yes.
Would you avoid questions about politics? You said it.
Okay.
Adolescents or young adults that they are a little bit rebels.
Okay. I would not avoid it. But I would have ground rules. I would have rules for conversation. And the rule has to be that at the Seder we want to discuss things. We don't want to make accusations and attacks on people. So as long as each person can say what they think, that's good. If you're forcing your idea on somebody else, then it's not okay. So I'll give you an example. For the 4 children, I once had coming to my Seder somebody, an older man, who loved automobiles. And I asked him if he would bring a picture of the 4 automobiles that represent for him the 4 children. So for the wise automobile, he brought a car which was a Prius, right, which was very good on gas, or maybe it would be one of those new electric cars. That was his wise car. For his wicked car, for the evil car, he had a Cadillac convertible that uses lots and lots of gas and makes lots of pollution. Somebody else brought 4 dogs, which were the 4. I would suggest in Brazil bring pictures of the 4 politicians. Who is the politician who is wise? Who is the one who is wicked? Who is the one who's simple, right? Right? They are the 10 plagues, right? But that's a way of doing it. Let's take a look in the Haggadah a little bit to see how it's structured. Okay? So if you'll open up to the very beginning, to the very first part of the page, you see in purple, the first page, It says, Bruchim Abaim, Bem-vindos ao nosso Seder. Okay? And it sets the tone. Adrian, can I ask you to read this? Thank you.
Bem-vindos ao nosso Seder. Hoje é uma noite para relembrar. Hoje é o aniversário do povo judeu e o renascimento da liberdade de cada indivíduo. Nesta noite vamos iniciar uma jornada de redescoberta, reviver a escravidão e a pobreza e então vivenciar a libertação e provar a abundância. Comendo juntos, tornamos-nos uma comunidade que se preocupa com as necessidades de cada um. Lendo, discutindo e argumentando, tornamos-nos estudiosos, uma comunidade de estudiosos. Fazendo perguntas e contando histórias, tornamos-nos uma comunidade que possui memória. Jogando e interpretando, tornamos uma comunidade que possui imaginação. Rezando juntos, tornamos uma comunidade de esperança, pronta para tomar uma decisão. Cantando juntos, tornamos uma comunidade de alegria e apreciação. Junte-se, participe, sinta-se livre para perguntar, para agregar, pular. Seja qual for a sua formação, qual for a sua idade, qual for o seu conhecimento, aproprie-se deste Seder. Sinta-se livre.
He has a lovely voice, doesn't he? You should invite him to your Seder. He can read very well out loud. And you're setting the tone for people to come and say, this Seder is going to be different. Now, if you are very rich and very wise, maybe you will buy new Haggadot for everybody at your Seder. And then what I do with our Haggadah is I ask people, when you're during the Seder, when you're looking at the pictures and you're reading different things, if you find anything interesting in the Seder, in the Haggadah, raise your hand and say, I want to read this to you. And very often people find very interesting things that they share. Sometimes the ideas don't have to come from you, they can come from the people through the pictures. Now, let me look at a second thing. Page 22. On page 22 is the beginning of Magid. Here you have the children dressing up as going out of Egypt. Here you have a little drama, a little theater, a conversation. That's the time to use all of the clothes at the very beginning when the children are awake. But then look at page 26. Page 26. Here is ha-lachma'anya. This is the bread of poverty. Now, I don't think we always pay attention to this. Pesach is not only about slavery to freedom, it's about poverty to having wealth. In many of our families, our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they were the story of poverty, and today they're in a situation of wealth. That's a story to tell for Pesach. But it also means that on Pesach, we have to think about poor people. In fact, before you go to Seder, you have to make sure that you make a contribution to some organization that gives people food who do not have food. All right? I'm sure that CP, like Shalom, has projects working with the poor. For example, can you give an example, Michelle?
This very year, we are going to host some refugees in our Seder.
Good. And are there projects that the children do with the poor during the year? Kids who study here?
Yes, there are many. Fê, contar projeto que as crianças fazem com pobres durante o ano. O que as crianças
fazem? Justo. Justo essa semana a gente vem trabalhando com os alunos a Tzedakah, e como isso é importante e todas as maneiras de fazer Tzedakah, e a gente está trazendo para mais perto dos alunos o Lar das Crianças, que é um projeto que a CIP tem, que ajuda justamente pessoas que não têm muitas possibilidades, estão em vulnerabilidade social de muitos lugares, de muitas diferentes situações. Então, a gente vem trazendo isso para cada vez mais perto. A gente já fez arrecadação de alimentos, arrecadação de muitas coisas.
So wait one moment. So in the Haggadah on page 27, in the yellow at the bottom is a very simple activity to do at your Seder after you read Halach Ma'anya. Can you read this out loud?
Que atos de solidariedade e que trabalho voluntário você testemunhou ou participou este ano? Existe algum projeto de tzedakah do qual você queira participar no próximo ano?
Thank you. You see, there are many people sitting here, and there's many people in your Seder who are doing volunteer work with NGOs of different kinds. For example, when I was in Rio, then the Rabbi Dario Bialer, his wife works with an NGO in the favela. What does she do? She tries to help mothers in the favela have a stronger relationship to their babies. And so she teaches them music and dance, and the mothers dance and sing with their babies and form a stronger relationship. If you ask at your Seder and two people can tell an interesting story about the work they do or work that they've heard somebody else do, then your Seder is a real Seder. It's a Seder about poverty and about helping people. It's not about you read, you read, you read. So you read a little piece, halach ma'anya, and then you go into the conversation. Nobody gets bored when people are telling stories about the real world. That's what you want. Now let's skip, and we're going to go to Manishtana. Manishtana. Okay, I need some on page 31 for the questions of Manishtana. Who would like to read? We have somebody from the back who would like to read. Are you willing to read for us? Okay, so I want you to read here what it says in this one. We want it 31 near the bottom. Atenção.
Atenção, serei obrigado a jogar balas em você. No início da noite de Seder, o professor de Jerusalém, Reuven Fierstein, educador de necessidades especiais, famoso mundialmente, sempre alerta as crianças ao redor da mesa. Hoje, à noite, é noite de Seder. É uma ocasião importante e nós temos que ler muito. Então não podemos ser incomodados com todo tipo de pergunta. Se vocês fizerem alguma pergunta, eu vou ser forçado a castigar vocês. Eu vou jogar muitas e muitas balas em vocês, entendido? Como é de se esperar, as crianças passam o resto da noite fazendo muitas perguntas, parando apenas para reunir as balas atiradas sobre elas pelo velho professor. Esta é apenas uma das muitas estratégias para extrair perguntas na noite do Seder. Charadas e perguntas como premiação ou simplesmente oferta de balas a cada pergunta feita, independente da resposta. Balas e nozes eram usadas como artimanha de publicidade pelos lojistas da era talmúdica para atrair crianças a entrarem nas suas lojas. Mishnah Baba Metzah 4:12. No Talmud, esses saborosos chamarizes ou prêmios são imprescindíveis para manter as crianças acordadas e interessadas no Seder. Como Maimônides explica nas suas orientações, no 12º século, para a noite de Seder, a pessoa deve fazer mudanças nessa noite, para que seus filhos percebam e perguntem o que torna esta noite diferente das outras, e que mudanças devem ser feitas. Distribuir guloseimas ou nozes para as crianças. Resumindo, servir sobremesa no começo da refeição, limpando a mesa antes que qualquer um tenha comido, ou arrancando a matzá para longe dos outros, e outras brincadeiras assim.
Thank you very much. So, when you get to Manishtana, you should have some candies for the children to make them ask, why are we getting dessert at the beginning of the meal? And then you give candies to people who ask questions. So you asked a question, so you get one. And you asked a question. And anybody else asked a question? And you asked a question, right? So you give out candies to make people wake up. You should have many surprises during your Seder. And you can tell people there's going to be surprises, and then you pull out that idea. Let's take a look at, let's go all the way to the story of after Manishtana, all the way to page 60. Page 60. Okay? Pesach is about slavery to freedom. But it's not only about political and economic slavery, it's also about spiritual slavery and psychological slavery. And so this is the part on page 60 about that. So if you want to, take a look at page 62 and look at the pictures on 62. It's all about people who are addicted. They have different addictions. That's how they're enslaved. Some people are addicted to emails and to texting. They can't live without a text in their hand. Other people have to answer every cell phone. Other people are always thinking about how much does it cost. Everything is about money. Some people it's smoking, and some people it's calories. The good thing is that on Pesach there are no calories. So this is a part in which to talk about people who made important choices in their life. Do you have anyone at your Seder who is a convert to Judaism? A very nice thing to do, if they feel comfortable, and tell them in advance, is when we get to spiritual freedom, ask, why did you decide to become a Jew? What was important in Judaism for you? But it doesn't only have to be the convert. I don't know when we get a chance to tell our children why Judaism is important for us. But if you have 2 or 3 people at the Seder table, fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers, who are willing to say, this is why Judaism is important to me, that is what Pesach is about. But don't ask them to tell, I'm going to tell you why Judaism should be important to you. No, this is why Judaism is important to me in my personal way. And there are many different ways for Judaism to be important to you. There were times in many people's lives who are sitting here in which Judaism wasn't important. And then at a certain point they say, you know what? I like my Judaism, and I like the synagogue, and I like being part of the Jewish community. Anybody who has made a decision to make Judaism important to them is a person who you can ask at the Seder, talk about why Judaism is important to you. Now, I don't know if you can get the young people to talk about that. That's a lot harder. But at least you can get the young people to listen to why Judaism is important to other people. Okay, let's keep going. Take a look at, okay. Here is a big part of the Seder that you can skip. Remember I told you, you can't do everything, you can skip things. Page 68 is the beginning of skipping. You can skip for 10 pages, I think, here. Now, what's happening on this page this is the part, Arami Oved Avi. My father was a wandering Aramean. My father came from another country, and he wandered and came to Israel, came to Egypt, and he was enslaved. The rabbis don't require you to read all of the commentaries on page 68, 69, 72, 73. You don't have to read those. But the rabbis wanted us to have a conversation about slavery and freedom. This is the time for politics, I think. Ask someone who cares about politics to talk about who is their hero in the world. Is it Natan Sharansky? Is it Lula? Who is their hero? Obviously not Lula, but Right, but it might be some person who changed the world in some positive way. Nelson Mandela or Yitzhak Rabin or Martin Luther King for me and for my father, Martin Luther King. So if you take a chance and ask somebody in advance to talk about what are the struggles today to move to a world which is a better place. And who are the people I look up to when I think about struggling to make the world a better place? Then that's a good discussion to have here. Not to read about it, but to discuss it only for 5 minutes. All right? That's the kind of thing. So then you can get the people who care about political issues to talk, especially younger people who do volunteer work, who go, for example, in the CP to Haiti, or they go to Kenya, or they do all kinds of wonderful things. Have them talk a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to skip all the way to... Skipping is good. Women. Right? Women, page 91. Where is the place of the woman on Pesach Seder? In the kitchen? Hopefully not only in the kitchen. So, in this Haggadah, they put things in also about women, especially about Miriam. And there is a custom, an American Jewish custom, to have a special cup with water in it. And here is a tambourine. How do you say tambourine? A tambourine for Miriam. And you can read a story about Miriam. And then you can talk about slavery and freedom. And talk about people can talk about, when did I as a woman feel discriminated against? That's important. Pesach is about discrimination and persecution. Have women at the table said, I felt persecuted, I felt limited, I felt discriminated against. Or talk about, when did I suddenly have new opportunities as a woman that I didn't have before? What do I think about the new law, or I don't know how new it is, that 35% or 33% of the political people running for have to be women? Am I for it or against it? To talk a little bit about women's issues is very good on Pesach, because many women think that Pesach is the holiday of their slavery in the kitchen. And for many women, it is their slavery in the kitchen. Some of them love that slavery, and that's good, especially for me. And some of them, but the women's issues are important issues for Pesach.
Where did you get that idea from?
I don't know. Okay, we're almost done. On page 98, we're at Afikoman. See, must be done if we're getting Afikoman. Tell me, who here, Michelle, helps with fundraising at CP or with the Federation? Is there anybody here? Look around. Anybody who helps with fundraising? But there must be somebody who... Is there anybody you can think of? Who? Luis. Okay, so for Luis, I'm going to ask you to read on page 98, Afikoman, and you see on the bottom of the side here, there's something that says, Recomendase. Okay? So this is a recommendation for doing fundraising at the Seder.
O Afikoman, a outra metade da matzá do meio, que foi escondida no início do Seder, deve agora ser comida. Seu gosto permanece como o último alimento ingerido no Seder. Neste ponto, os líderes, para seu espanto, descobrem que o Afikoman foi roubado pelas crianças. Sabendo que ele deve ser comido no fim da refeição, os líderes devem negociar pelo seu retorno. Recomenda-se que os prêmios judaicos, um livro ou jogo, sejam oferecidos, assim como a promessa de algum dinheiro. Algumas famílias pedem que as crianças deem 10% de seu prêmio de Afikoman para uma tzedakah, de sua escolha, e que anunciem o beneficiário nesta hora. Pode-se pedir aos adultos que igualem a oferta.
Many children think that afikoman is about their making money and they get money. But you can also make it about who they want to give the money to. When my father, alav hashalom, passed away, he took the money from his apartment and said that 25% of the value of the apartment would be given to tzedakah. And he asked all of his 9 grandchildren to get together and to decide who to give the money to. He wanted them to participate in the decision-making. And this is also a chance to have all the children and grandchildren get together to get a little bit of money and also to give a little money to whatever they want to give it to. Take a look at page... my wife reminded me of something. Who has a good charoset recipe? Anybody have a good... Anybody have Moroccan charoset? Or Sfaradi charoset? Or is there a Brazilian charoset with mango and passion fruit? Right? Cashew nuts? Right? So when Marcella and I were in Manaus with the Kihila, with the Moroccan Kihila in Manaus, then all of the women, of course the women, got together already and they have made charoset for all the families. And so we got charoset balls to take home to Israel for our Seder. A nice thing to do for charoset is to have many different kinds of charoset at your Seder table, not just one. So we passed out, at least for some people, charoset recipes. If you ask different people coming to the Seder to make 4 different kinds of charoset, then you can have a charoset taste test, where people taste it, and they have to decide all the ingredients in that charoset. There is one recipe for charoset that I recommend you do not use. Has anybody ever been to Gibraltar? What is Gibraltar? Gibraltar. What is Gibraltar? It's a very big rock. Who does the rock belong to? To England, actually. And there's a very nice, wonderful Sephardi Jewish community, that many of them have been the mayors and the governors of Gibraltar. And they have a Siddur in English. And in their Siddur and in their Haggadah, they have a special recipe for charoset. So it has apples and nuts and wine, but it also has a brick. When you finish making the charoset, then you take the brick and you put granules of brick into the charoset. I don't recommend that charoset. But you might want to put a brick on your table, right? And then on top of it, you can put the charoset inside the brick. Because in 150 years ago, during this American Civil War between the North and the South about slavery, when Brazil still had slavery and the Americans were trying to get rid of slavery, then there was Jewish soldiers who wanted to have a Seder and they didn't have any charoset. So instead, they put a brick on the table to remind them of charoset, because that's what charoset is supposed to remind you of. Okay. Last but not least, let's go all the way to the last page here, and then we'll see if there's any questions. Turn to page 128. 128. L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. It's the 70th anniversary of the establishment of Israel. This is a good time to think about Israel. And tomorrow at Shalom, I'm going to have a class talking about the connection between Israel and Jerusalem and the Seder. But for those of you who will not be there tomorrow, take a look at the picture on page 129. The artist who did all the artwork in our Haggadah is a political cartoonist. His name, I love his name, is Michel Kishka. Michel Kishka is from Shomer HaTzair. He was a left-wing Zionist from Belgium, came to Israel, and became the most famous political cartoonist. So all the pictures here have a certain adult humor to them. We asked him to draw a picture for next year in Jerusalem in which all the problems in Israel, all the conflicts would disappear. Maybe we should ask him to draw a drawing like that for Brazil, where all the conflicts in Brazil disappear. So in his version, what conflicts do you see on page 129?
Must read the newspaper, translate to English. That's the...
What is in the newspaper in Hebrew?
I'll explain that to you, okay? Right. So if you look at the taxi cab driver thinks that the day when the Messiah comes, he will read in the newspaper that Israel, not Brazil, has won the Mundial. That will be the Messiah for sure for him, right? Other things, can you find who is the man on top of the wall? Herzl. Does he look happy? No. He is reading the book Judenstadt, the Jewish state, which was his vision of the utopia in Israel, and he's looking at the reality, and he's not sure that that's what he wanted. Next to him is a dove, and below is an olive tree. Where can you find 400-year olive trees in Sao Paulo? And Solomon's temple, they imported 12 giant old olive trees from Uruguay, right. Not from Israel. That was too far. Now, what other conflicts do you see in the picture that are solved, that are reconciled? Yes, you have Arab nationalists wearing a kafia, Arafat, talking to a West Bank settler, Mitnachel, and they're having coffee together. And you have a wolf and a goat, right? It was supposed to be a wolf and a lamb, but he didn't know the psukim so well. Yes, and who's the man on with the red beard? No, it's not Jesus. Where was Jesus born? In Bethlehem, right? In Bethlehem? No, in Bethlehem, right? But who was born before Jesus in Bethlehem? David HaMelech, which is why they said that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, because they wanted Jesus to be the son of David from the same city, Bethlehem. So this is King David coming on his white donkey as the Messiah. And then there are two men who play soccer, who play football. One has a yellow shirt, one has a red shirt. In Israel, the sports teams are by political parties. The yellow is the sports team of Beitar, of the Likud, and the red, of course, is Hapoel. That's the team of the Labor Party. And here they're getting along together. In reality, they never get along together. And if you look through the gate, this is especially for you, Michelle, what do you see when you look through the gate into the old city? Look at the buildings and what's on top of the buildings. You have a Muslim building with a Muslim symbol. You have a church with a cross, and you have a menorah, because part of the dream of the Messiah for us, who created this Haggadah, is that the three religions will get along together. And so look at the name of Jerusalem has 8 gates. None of the gates are called Sha'ar HaShalom, but in the days of the Messiah, we will have a gate, finally, of Sha'ar HaShalom. Thank you very, very much for coming tonight. I would like to thank especially the dog and the goat and the pussycat, especially. And of course, there are many other people. I want to thank Laura and Isa, who created this wonderful table, and I'm sure everyone is going to imitate it this year at their Seder. And of course, Michelle and Adrian and Ariel, and I don't know if Fernanda is here. Oh yes, absolutely. And for bringing these two kihilot together around this wonderful project. And I wish all of you a very meaningful Seder. Remember, at least 10%, except for the Chalabim.
Eu queria agradecer a presença de todos para essa noite que foi muito interessante para cada um poder pensar um pouquinho qual é o seu Seder e aproveitar para fazer o convite para o Seder comunitário da CIP, que vai ser na primeira noite. E aqueles que sim têm um Seder podem patrocinar. Falamos sobre a questão da pobreza e como nós podemos contribuir para que outras pessoas possam ter experiência de Seder. Então, se vocês não têm onde passar o Seder, venham conosco. E se vocês têm onde passar o Seder, apoiem alguém que está vindo para cá e que não tem condições de participar financeiramente desse Seder. Então, obrigada a todos. A segunda noite tem o Seder na Shalom. Então, o primeiro Seder aqui, segundo Seder comunitário na Shalom. Ninguém fica sem Seder. Boa noite a todos, muito obrigada. Hag Sameach.
Shut up.